Kash Patel, about to be confirmed there. We heard from him earlier today, and I just want to show you. He's got, what, a 94% chance? 94% chance. He's up 36%. Let me tell you, Polymarket's usually spot on this. They called the election before anyone. And I think this does suggest we got ourselves a new head of the FBI. And boy, oh boy, does Washington not like this. Kash is promising to investigate fully when and where needed. And you know what? He doesn't want to have what happened to Donald Trump happen to any other politician ever again. He's insisting that, you know what? We do the right thing by everyone. I want to go to an excerpt from him here on Capitol Hill today. I am telling you, he means business. And Letitia James, watch out, because he's coming for you. For sure.
Confirmed as the next FBI director, I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission. That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so, and to never make a prosecutorial decision that is solely the providence of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. For the first 8 years after law school, I served as a public defender, first for Miami-Dade County and later for the Southern District of Florida. During that time, I represented some pretty awful human beings, charged with some pretty heinous crimes. But what I learned there was the core value that has been enshrined in me since, that due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst, then there can be no due process for anyone, and our constitutional republic fails. But I battled on that hill for that due process.
Yeah. And that means, Tish James, I think that given where you went and everything you did and the enormous fees that you tried to impose on the president, we're going to have some problems. We're going to have a lot of problems.
With other Democratic AGs across this country to make sure that we would be ready to respond to any attempt to roll back our rights. So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready.
Yeah. Okay. Well, glad to hear that, because you better be ready. Because I have a feeling, just a little inkling, judging from some of what I heard from Kash Patel today, that he's actually going to be coming for you. And you know what? I'll go back to Polymarket. It's looking like this guy's going to get confirmed. So this is going to be the new head of the FBI. And I think you're going to have to answer a few questions. I mean, Eric Trump was asking these questions back in 2023 when you were going after his dad. He laid it out pretty well here.
Right, you have a corrupt attorney general who literally ran on the campaign promise of taking down my father. She goes, I'm going to go after Donald. I'm going to take down his family. I'm going to go after his children. I'm going to get, her exact quote, I'm going to get to the office of attorney general every day. I'm going to sue Donald Trump, and then I'm going to go home. I mean, she'd fundraise off of this nonsense. Like, this was her entire platform going after right after my father. Then obviously she gets into office and she does exactly that. And you've got a crooked court and everything else. But actually, I think we're making a breakthrough with the judge. I think they're trying to realize there are no victims. First of all, my father's statements are undervalued, not overvalued. Second of all, she's going after banks. She's trying to protect banks that made hundreds of millions of dollars with Trump, meaning there were no aggrieved party. There were no defaults. There were no missed loan covenants.
You guys made money. That's why
we'd borrow money. Yeah. Go do a great project. Be very successful.
Jobs and homes.
Pay a tremendous amount of interest, and then pay the banks back in full. Like, we never had so much as a default. No one. So we're saying they're saying, is there a victim in this? I mean, you're suing us and there's no victim, but Carla, it's nonsense. The DOJ has told Letitia James to make my father's life hell. To keep him tied up in a courtroom, to cost him tens and tens of millions of dollars, to distract him.
Yeah. Right, and that's exactly what she did. And this is what she campaigned on. He's absolutely right. I mean, what kind of world are we living in when you campaign on one thing, you're just going to get someone because he's your political enemy and you think it's actually going to land you some campaign dollars? This is what she did. You know it.
He's called me venomous.
We will fight back to your attempt to bring Trumpism to New York City.
He's called me disgraceful.
Of the fact that they stole the Supreme Court seat. An illegitimate president and an illegitimate member of the United States Supreme Court.
He's called me radical.
Listen, yes. We know he's crazy. Yes. We know he doesn't have a sound mind. Yes. We know he's out of control.
called me a racist.
We've got to stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale.
Okay. So, you know the drill. All right. You know who she is. You know what she did. But what Kash is going to try and get at, and this is what's going to unravel everything, and this is what everybody's so freaked out about, is just exactly what role Merrick Garland, the DOJ, Biden, etc., played in all of this. Because I have a feeling they played a pretty decent instrumental role. This is something that Matt Gaetz was trying to get at when he was in the House of Representatives. I want to show you this exchange he has with Garland, and he's pushing him and he's asking just exactly what kind of communications did you guys have? It has now come out that we know at least they were communicating with Fannie Willis's BF, who was running the case down in Georgia. That was all thrown out because of disqualification, of course. Really lousy attorneys right across the board that were involved in this. Anyway, you've got Merrick Garland who can't answer Matt Gaetz' question. This is really important. We got to get back to this, and I know Kash will. I want to play it for you. Here we go.
Communicating with these state and local prosecutions against Trump, you can clear it all up for us right now. Will the Department of Justice provide to the committee all documents, all correspondence between the department and Alvin Bragg's office and Fannie Willis' office and Letitia James's office?
The offices you're referring to are independent offices of state.
I get that. The question is whether or not you will provide all of your documents and correspondence. That's the question. I don't need a history lesson.
Well, I'm going to say again, we do not control those offices. They make their own decisions.
The question is whether you communicate with them, not whether you control them. Do you communicate with them, and will you provide those communications?
You make a request. We'll refer it to our Office of Legislative Affairs.
But see, here's the thing. You come in here and you lodge this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, give us the correspondence, and then if it's...
But they couldn't. You see, or they wouldn't. And instead, they leveled a nearly $500 million. That's $500 million, guys. Like, this is a lot of money, right? It makes no sense. Against Donald Trump in the case of Letitia James and Judge Arthur, who somehow thought that Mar-a-Lago was worth only $18 million. I mean, this was bonkers. Remember this? This was part of the case, actually. Just after he won the presidency, his lawyers came out and they tried to get her to drop this in the interest of the country. And they're like, this doesn't really make any sense because Mar-a-Lago, you were trying to say, was somewhere around $18 million. $18 million. It makes more than 56 a year. Like, why would it be worth? Usually things trade on a multiple, right? You might say it's going to trade at 10 times earnings. Well, if the earnings are 56, how are you valuing it at 18? I'm sorry, Letitia. Like, you're not even a good lawyer, but forget about valuing any kind of assets. And yet they come up with this nearly $500 million fine, and she's out ready to seize his assets, just waiting so she can take over Trump Tower and take over his golf courses. It's nuts, you guys.
4 days after a judge ordered Donald Trump to pay $355 million for a decade of fraud, New York Attorney General Letitia James says she's prepared to do everything she can to make sure the former president pays his fine, including, she told us, seizing the buildings that bear his name.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment, then we will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
That's what she was waiting for. Oh, she just wanted to seize those. I mean, it's bonkers. So now it's in the appellate court, right? And we're waiting on the Court of Appeals, who really can't get off their you-know-what. And they're sitting there, and they haven't done a damn thing yet. Even though we know how they feel. I mean, they wouldn't even let Judith Vale, who was representing New York, and Letitia James, she's at the appellate court, right? So she's supposed to be a little bit smarter, and the judges are supposed to be a little bit smarter at the appellate court. Here's the New York Court of Appeals. They wouldn't let her get a word out.
May it please the court, Judith Vale for the New York Attorney General's office. All of the defendants repeatedly violated... Ms.
Vale, can you identify any previous case in which the Attorney General sued under Executive Law 6312 to upset a private business transaction that was between equally sophisticated partners where the supposed victim had the ability and legal obligation to discover the allegedly misrepresented matters by conducting its own due diligence, where the supposed wrongdoer advised the supposed victim through written disclaimers to conduct its own due diligence and to draw its own conclusions, where the alleged misrepresentation almost entirely concerned inherently subjective valuations of properties and businesses.
Yes.
And where the victim never complained about any fraud in the transactional losses from it. Because I've gone through the cases which you've cited, and all of them always involved the consumer protection aspect. It involved protection of the market.
Several responses.
And I want to add to his question, and little to no impact on the public marketplace.
Boom. Okay, so no impact on the public markets. You have no victim. It sounds, as the judge said, like a private case, and yet Letitia brought it anyway. And now we're in a situation where she's promising to double down. She's doubling down, but yet, you got one Kash Patel who's coming in as head of the FBI, and I think he's going to be wanting to do some of his due diligence to figure out just exactly how this all came about, which is why people like Dick Durbin are so freaked out. And he goes on CNN, and he's trying to talk down Kash and say, oh, he's not qualified. Let me tell you, the guy's qualified.
It is such a loss. Are you aware the hearing is still going on as planned today in less than an hour, frankly?
Yes, at 9:30 we're going to start the hearing on the person the president has chosen to lead the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I can tell you I have some questions, serious questions about his competence for that responsibility. Remember, we're talking about 38,000 criminal and civil investigators in the premier law enforcement agency, not just in the United States, but in the world. We want a person there who is responsible, experienced, and can handle this awesome responsibility.
And Senator, you have general questions, as you just said, about his ability to handle an agency of that size, but you also have very specific questions about a specific moment during the end of the Trump administration. Explain.
Well, I can tell you that there was, you don't have to go searching for a playbook when it comes to Mr. Kash Patel. He has published a book called Government Gangsters, which goes into excruciating detail about his theories on political conspiracies and retribution against those who did not treat him properly over the years. To give this man the authority of leading the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I think is questionable. We need someone with sound judgment who is not driven by politics, and Mr. Patel does not fit that description.
Understood. And I was referring to the hostage rescue and his
like Biden's people were not driven by politics. Are you kidding me? I mean, he says this, right, with a straight face. So they hate him because they're terrified of what he is going to find out. Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, and Jack Smith. Like, they're so freaked out about what is about to be uncovered if Kash gets the gig, and Kash is going to get the gig because, well, I'm basing this on Polymarket, which tends to have a pretty good instinct on these things. 94% chance at this point in time he's going to get confirmed. Pete Hegseth got confirmed. RFK is going to get confirmed. I'm telling you, the whole world is going to change as you know it. Maybe Tulsi, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Joy Reid, she's the one who was just, oh, thank goodness, all these people like Letitia and Fannie and Alvin, they're bringing it home for me.
In prison. But for me, there is something wonderfully poetic about the fact that despite the fact that even if convicted, he's not going to go to prison, the first person to actually criminally prosecute Donald Trump is a black Harvard grad, the very kind of person that his former staff, the people who worked for him, Stephen Miller, et cetera, want to never be at Harvard Law School. But he was. And he came out and graduated. He's prosecuting you, Donald. And a black woman is doing that same exact thing in Georgia. And a black woman forced you to pay a $175 million fine that's out now also in question because the people who put it up, that might not be legit. Donald Trump is being held to account by the very multicultural, multiracial democracy that he's trying to dismantle. And for me, there's something poetic and actually wonderful about that. It says something good about our country that we're still capable of having that happen. Go DEI. My DEIs are bringing it home on today.
No, it's striking.
Her DEIs are bringing it home. bunch of lawsuits that, by the way, you know, I guess they got Alvin Bragg, and they can brag that they got the felony conviction there, but that's eventually going to get tossed out in the appellate court. Letitia James has got nothing. In fact, if anything, if you listen to what those appellate judges were saying, they were like, wait a second, we need to make sure that like this kind of stuff doesn't happen before, because if it happened here, it could happen again, and we need to rein in these very politically motivated prosecutors. And the DEIs, I'm sorry, but like, been there, done that. Like, that's not working. It's not working for this country. You know, we are a meritocracy, and we were founded on that. In the United States of America, we don't care what color you are. We don't care what sex you are. We only care that you can get the job done. And let me tell you, that's all Donald Trump cares about, for sure. I mean, for goodness sakes, we saw that today, did we not? We saw that on display. He said over and over and over again, we can't be relying on DEI. We're going to get into that coming up. I mean, it's one of the reasons I started 76 Research, by the way, my financial firm, 76research.com. Use code word dollar. You can get the 76 report for just $1 a month. I encourage you to do that. But this was in part because I saw Wall Street doing this, and I'm like, this makes no sense. I talked to my buddy Rob, who'd run billions of dollars for decades on Wall Street, and I'm like, what is going on? We both had the same reaction, so that's partly why we started that. I'll get into more of that later, but I just want to say, like, DEI is not like that is not a reason to be doing things, really. I mean, if you want diversity because it actually gets you to a better place and you want other perspectives, great. But if you're just trying to check a box because you want to make other people feel better about themselves, no. Look, and I'm just going to point this out. You know, Letitia's going after him now because of, well, this.
Today I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And that's a tough place to get out of. Today's signings bring us one step closer to eradicating the scourge of migrant crime in our communities once and for all. And it was just it's just an unforced error that we even have to be doing this. Now we need Congress to provide full funding for the complete and total restoration of our sovereign borders, as well as financial support to remove record numbers of illegal aliens.
Yeah, well, Letitia apparently doesn't like that very much. Steve Frisch saying Trump should sign an executive order, Operation Hummingbird, against these people. Look, it's happening, Steve. It's happening, you guys. This is not the same Trump administration. They have been through hell. Okay, for 4 years, they were trying to bankrupt him. They were trying to put him and his family in jail. They know what the Democrats are capable of, and they want to make sure that that doesn't ever happen again. In the meantime, guess what? He also wants to make sure that the country's in a better position. So that means, getting rid of some of the DEI stuff. It means, arresting criminals. Because, by the way, Letitia, whether you like it or not, the federal government does have jurisdiction over things like who is in the country. You don't have jurisdiction over that. And for the most part, most people don't want criminals in the country. I mean, heck, even Whoopi Goldberg admitted so much on The View just yesterday. This must have taken a lot out of her. I'm telling you, the contract's on the line. She must be in like renegotiation right now because she's actually sounding normal. It's just for a couple seconds.
To themselves. But 87% support deporting criminal undocumented migrants.
Yes, I don't know anybody in the world. I don't know anybody in the world who wants to keep the criminals. I don't know anybody.
That's where we should be focused.
Can I say something? Because,
no one in the world actually wants to keep the criminals. It's like 87%. The polls are overwhelming, showing no one actually wants criminals in the country. Although ICE tells us we have 650,000 of them. 650,000. And the administration would say, you know what, you're a criminal if you're in this country illegally, period. Well, here's Letitia saying, guess what? We got laws. We got laws that protect our immigrants and limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement efforts. Those laws should be followed by law enforcement and officials in our state. I'll always uphold our laws and protect immigrant New Yorkers. So she's like, you know, going AWOL. Like she's kind of like left the reservation here. Letitia thinks that New York is its own little country and can do its own little thing. And we hate to remind her, I mean, she's a lawyer after all. Maybe not a very good one, not a very bright one, just a very political one. Letitia, the federal government, like if they have any power at all, it's the power over who is in our country. It is the power over our borders, lady. Understood? No, she doesn't understand. Here she is just this week talking about how she's going to take on Trump.
Not only does this administration's new policy put people at risk, but it is plainly unconstitutional. The president does not get to decide which laws to enforce and for whom. When Congress dedicates funding for a program, the president cannot pull that funding on a whim. Later today, I am leading and joining with my colleagues, my fellow Democratic attorney generals, in suing this administration to stop this illegal freeze.
Okay, so you know where she's going. You're hearing the same thing out of California, and you're going to have these little annexes of places that are all going to try and do this. And I'm just going to remind you that there's a new team in charge. You got Pam Bondi coming in as Attorney General. You're going to have Kash Patel running the FBI. So I'm just going to say, Letitia, you know what? He's got some top people right now who are not going to put up with your BS. And this is one fight. I'm sorry, lady, you're just not going to win. She says she's ready, though. She's been preparing for this day forever.
With other Democratic AGs across this country to make sure that we would be ready to respond to any attempt to roll back our rights. So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready. We're ready to respond to their attacks.
Okay, yeah. She's been fundraising for a while on this. She's all ready to throw a few more lawsuits out there. She's got one already. She brags about how she got 100 in during the last go-around. So give her money because she'll sue Trump for it. Listen, this shouldn't be that controversial, okay? Getting rid of DEI should not be controversial. I mean, Martin Luther King is the one who didn't want to see people by color, now did he? And yet all they can see is color. Obama, he actually led the charge on getting illegals out of the country. He was right out in front of this. And by the way, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, they all said the same thing. But it's funny how it changes when it's Trump, right? Like, I mean, look, I played this for you guys. I'm going to play it again. Here we go.
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only...
Oopsie, I didn't want to come off.
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half century. And to those members of Congress who question my authority to make our immigration system work better, or question the wisdom of me acting where Congress has failed, I have one answer. Pass a bill.
Okay, so here's the upshot. Guess what? Mr. Obama, President Obama, sent them all out. He sent out more illegals than any other president. So how does that quite work? Letitia, apparently New York was fine with it then, right? New York was totally fine with it then. It just changes once it's Trump. But, you know, Caroline Leavitt made something pretty clear the other day in her press conference. She said, this is how we view it. We realize Biden didn't see it this way, but this is how we see it.
500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
So there you go. Apparently it had to be said. Even though Obama was very out front about sending back people who were here illegally. So this is what you have to conclude, is this is about Trump. This is about hating Trump, and they're continuing to make their political careers all about hating Trump. They just want to get in the way. And it's as Joy said, her favorite DEI is bringing it home.
In prison. But for me, there is something wonderfully poetic about the fact that despite the fact that even if convicted, he's not going to go to prison, the first person to actually criminally prosecute Donald Trump is a black Harvard grad, the very kind of person that his former staff, the people who worked for him, Stephen Miller, et cetera, want to never be at Harvard Law School. But he was. And he came out and graduated. He's prosecuting you, Donald. And a black woman is doing that same exact thing in Georgia. And a black woman forced you to pay a $175 million fine that's out now also in question because the people who put it up, that might not be legit. Donald Trump is being held to account by the very multicultural, multiracial democracy that he's trying to dismantle. And for me, there's something poetic and actually wonderful about that. It says something good about our country that we're still capable of having that happen. Go DEI. My DEIs are bringing
it home. I mean, that is just sort of pathetic, right? She's saying that. Steve Frischman, he's very much into having some kind of operation, right? You got to go after Letitia. Maybe she's going to do time. I don't know. Like, I think that there's a lot of people that you have to go after. I think that this was a very, very sort of wide spanning op. I think that Garland, I want to know, like, how much were they coordinating with all of these people? Also, thank you, Steve, for your generosity. You did watch some of the Tulsi hearing. That's good. We're going to get to the Tulsi hearing because I saw some of that too. And there's some quotes that are really, really important and significant. And it relates to what's going on. Like, Kash needs to look into this. Tulsi needs to look into this. And, for all those that are trying to say that Kash Patel doesn't have the qualifications, give me a break. Well-educated, worked there as a public defender in Miami-Dade County, believes in the justice of our system, right? And if you believe really in what we are as a nation, everybody deserves due process. And this was his point. And this is not what they gave Donald Trump. They didn't offer that to him in any way. He was like automatically guilty just because he was Donald Trump. And now you have to go appeal. Well, he's lucky he has the ability to do that. But what about somebody who's just sort of starting out in politics and suddenly they're on the wrong side of things because they're on the wrong side of the aisle? It's really bad.